The moment Elena Reyes entered the isolation chamber, she knew this was going to be different from any diplomatic mission in human history. The walls were a sterile white, with barely any features except for a single communication console and a small living area. Outside the reinforced quantum barriers, she could see the bustling diplomatic levels of Nexus Prime Station, a hive of alien species moving, negotiating, interacting. And here she was, completely cut off. "Welcome, Ambassador Reyes," a computerized voice announced. "You are now in complete diplomatic isolation." The decision had come swiftly and without much explanation. After the Chen incident, a diplomatic negotiation that had completely restructured 3 major galactic trade routes without firing a single weapon, the Galactic Assembly had decided that humans were too unpredictable to be allowed free interaction. Elena walked to the window. The barriers shimmered with a soft blue light, a constant reminder of her separation. Her entire diplomatic team was confined to this single chamber, cut off from direct communication with any other species. A small notification pinged on her console. "Daily communication packet incoming." The automated system began its routine. A sealed compartment opened, depositing carefully screened documents, communication recordings, and essential supplies. Exactly 137 seconds. No more, no less. Every single item would be meticulously examined, every potential communication channel monitored and controlled. She picked up the first document. It was a standard diplomatic brief, but Elena knew better. Her team had become experts at reading between the lines, finding information in the spaces between words. Complete isolation, she muttered to herself, doesn't mean complete ignorance. The room was sparse but functional. A holographic display could project any environment, any scenario, but it was still a cage, a carefully constructed prison designed to contain what the galaxy feared most: human potential. Her communication device chirped. A message from her second-in-command, Dr. Michael Chen. No relation to the infamous diplomat who had caused this entire situation. "They think isolation will stop us," the message read. "They have no idea." Elena allowed herself a small smile. The galaxy had tried to silence humanity by cutting them off. But isolation had never been a weakness for humans. It had always been an opportunity. Outside the window, alien diplomats continued their intricate dance of negotiations and power plays. They moved freely, talked freely, interacted freely. And here, behind these quantum barriers, the human team was already working. Thinking, planning. The day of their first major diplomatic interaction was approaching, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The communication console flickered to life at precisely 600 hours. Elena Reyes had been awake for hours, studying the latest diplomatic briefings. The screen showed a single message: diplomatic interaction, SCHEDULET. Her team gathered around the console. Dr. Michael Chen, the lead strategist, looked pale but determined. They had been preparing for this moment since their isolation began. "The Zornak Collective," Michael said, pointing to the holographic display. "They've requested a preliminary communication." The Zornak were notorious. A species that had conquered dozens of civilizations, they operated on a strict hierarchical system of dominance and submission. Every previous species had either surrendered or been completely destroyed. The quantum barriers around their isolation chamber hummed with energy. Multiple layers of communication filters stood between the human team and direct contact. It was more than a barrier. It was a cage designed to contain their potential. Elena took a deep breath. Prepare the initial response packet. Their communication was carefully constructed. No direct threats, no displays of aggression. Just pure, calculated information. Each word would be analyzed, filtered, and potentially censored by the galactic monitoring systems. Michael began inputting data: economic reports, cultural analyses, subtle indicators of potential cooperation and mutual benefit. The Zornak expected a typical response: fear, submission, or futile resistance. They would get neither. The console blinked, Transmission authorized. Seconds stretched into minutes. The room was silent except for the soft hum of computer systems processing their carefully crafted message. Then, a response. The holographic display flickered. A Zornak diplomatic representative appeared, a towering figure with multiple eyes and a rigid exoskeleton. Its voice was cold, mechanical. "Explain your purpose," it demanded. Elena stepped forward. This was the moment that would define everything. "We're here to talk," she said simply. The Zornak representative seemed confused. Talking was not typically part of their diplomatic approach. They were used to giving orders, not having conversations. Michael's hand hovered near additional data streams. Every piece of information was a potential weapon. Every word a carefully placed strategic element. The isolation chamber felt smaller. The quantum barriers seemed to pulse with tension. Outside their sealed environment, the galaxy watched and waited. Humanity's first move in a game no one fully understood was about to begin. Elena met the Zornak's multiple-eyed gaze. No fear, no submission. Just pure, calculated potential. "Let's discuss," she said. The Zornak's response came exactly 47 minutes after their initial communication. Not a typical diplomatic transmission, but a series of complex data packets that initially seemed like random noise. "It's a test," Michael Chen muttered, his fingers flying across the analysis console. Elena watched carefully. Every species had its own communication quirks, but the Zornak were different. Known for their ruthless conquests, they rarely engaged in anything resembling a genuine dialogue. The data streams began to resolve into a pattern. Not words, exactly, but something more fundamental. Economic projections, resource maps, subtle indicators of potential conflict zones across multiple star systems. "They're prodding us," Elena realized, "seeing how we process information." The isolation chamber felt smaller. Their quantum-filtered communication systems hummed with activity. Every incoming byte was scrutinized, analyzed, decoded. Michael looked up, his face a mixture of excitement and concern. "They're not treating us like a potential conquest. They're treating us like a problem to be solved." The Zornak diplomatic representative had disappeared from the initial holographic display. In its place, a complex web of data continued to flow. Star charts, economic models, trade route simulations. It was a test, and humanity was going to ace it. Elena moved to the secondary console. Their response needed to be precise, not aggressive, not submissive, something entirely unexpected. She began to construct a response that would challenge everything the Zornak understood about diplomatic interaction. The first layer was economic. Detailed projections that showed potential mutual benefits in regions the Zornak had overlooked. The second layer was more subtle, cultural analysis that hinted at unexplored diplomatic opportunities. "They want a puzzle," Michael said, "so we'll give them a puzzle they can't solve easily." The communication system blinked. Transmission prepared. Outside their isolated chamber, the quantum barriers continued to shimmer. The rest of the galactic diplomatic community remained unaware of what was happening inside this sealed environment. Elena's finger hovered over the transmission button. One push would change everything. She pressed send. Alarms blared across the Nexus Prime station. The quantum barriers around the human diplomatic chamber began to pulse with an unusual energy. Elena Reyes and her team watched as multiple diplomatic channels suddenly erupted with activity. "They're panicking," Michael Chen said quietly. The transmission they had sent was unlike anything the galactic diplomatic community had seen before. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea. It was something entirely different. A complex web of potential solutions that seemed to rewrite the very rules of diplomatic engagement. On the holographic displays surrounding their isolation chamber, Elena could see representatives from dozens of alien species reacting. Some looked confused. Others looked frightened. A few looked almost impressed. The Zornak representative reappeared, but this time something was different. The usual rigid posture seemed uncertain. Explain, the representative demanded. Elena stepped forward. We're offering a solution, she said simply. Their transmission had done more than just respond to the Zornak's initial probe. It had identified potential conflicts in multiple star systems, proposed alternative resource management strategies, and suggested diplomatic approaches that could prevent 3 potential wars, all without firing a single weapon. The communication console continued to pulse with incoming messages. The quantum barriers around their chamber seemed to vibrate with tension. They don't know what to do with us, Michael muttered. Outside their isolated chamber, the entire galactic diplomatic community was trying to understand what had just happened. Humans had been separated, cut off, isolated from all direct interaction. And yet, they had just changed the entire diplomatic landscape with a single transmission. The Zornak representative's multiple eyes seemed to blink in confusion. Elena allowed herself a small smile. Their isolation was becoming their greatest strength. Another alarm sounded. Incoming high-priority communication. The game was about to change. The communication console flashed with a priority signal Elena had never seen before. Official Galactic Assembly authorization code. Highest level clearance. Open it, Michael Chen said, his voice tight with anticipation. The holographic display flickered to life. A council of diplomatic representatives appeared. Representatives from 17 different alien species, each looking more uncomfortable than the last. The lead representative spoke. A crystalline being from the Andromeda cluster, its form shifting with each word. Explain, it demanded. Elena knew this was more than a simple request. This was a moment that would define humanity's place in the galactic community. Their previous transmission had done something unprecedented. It had exposed potential conflicts in multiple star systems, proposed solutions that no other species had considered, created diplomatic pathways that seemed to bypass traditional methods of negotiation, and they had done it from within a sealed isolation chamber. We're offering a different approach, Elena responded carefully. Each word was a calculated move, each sentence a potential diplomatic weapon. The council members exchanged glances. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. A few looked almost impressed. The Zornak representative from their previous communication was there too. Its multiple eyes seemed to bore into Elena, searching for some hidden threat. Your isolation was meant to contain you, the crystalline representative said. Yet you found a way to influence galactic diplomacy from within a sealed chamber. Michael's hand hovered near additional data streams. Their entire team was ready, waiting for the next move. The quantum barriers around their chamber hummed with tension. Outside, the entire diplomatic station seemed to hold its breath. We're here to help, Elena said simply. Another alarm sounded. Incoming priority transmission. The game was about to change again. The quantum barriers suddenly flickered. Elena Reyes felt the change immediately. Something was different. The isolation chamber that had been their prison for weeks was transforming. Michael Chen's hands flew across the communication console. They're changing the parameters, he said, his voice a mix of excitement and concern. The walls of their chamber began to shift. Holographic displays expanded, showing multiple diplomatic channels simultaneously. It was as if the Galactic Council was giving them a window, but not quite removing their isolation. Partial access, Elena muttered. They want to see what we'll do. The Zornak representative appeared again, but this time, something was different. The usual rigid posture seemed almost hesitant. Your previous transmission, the representative said, has created significant diplomatic complications. Elena knew what that meant. Their carefully constructed message had exposed weaknesses in multiple galactic power structures. Solutions that no one had wanted to address were now impossible to ignore. The communication console pinged. Incoming data streams from multiple star systems. Economic reports, conflict zone analyses, resource distribution models. They're testing us, Michael said. The quantum barriers continued to pulse. Their isolation was changing, but not ending. A controlled release of information. A carefully managed window of interaction. Elena stepped forward. We're ready, she said simply. The holographic displays showed reactions from dozens of alien species: confusion, anger, a few hints of potential respect. Another alarm sounded. Incoming high-priority transmission. The game was about to change again. The isolation chamber went silent. Elena Reyes looked at Michael Chen. Something was happening. The quantum barriers that had contained them for so long were changing. A single communication channel opened. Direct, unfiltered. The Zornak representative appeared, but this time, something was different. No demands, no threats, just a request. "Explain your previous transmission," the representative said. Michael's fingers moved across the console. Their entire diplomatic strategy was about to be tested. The transmission they had sent weeks ago had done more than just propose solutions. It had exposed fundamental flaws in galactic diplomatic systems, showed pathways to resolve conflicts that no one had considered before. Elena stepped forward. "We're offering a different approach," she said. The holographic displays around them began to fill with data. Star charts, economic projections, conflict zone analyses. Everything they had carefully constructed was now being examined. "Your isolation was meant to prevent this," the Zornak representative said. Elena allowed herself a small smile. "Isolation can be a strength," she responded. The quantum barriers continued to pulse. Their chamber was still sealed, but something had changed. The galactic diplomatic community was listening. Really listening. Michael whispered something under his breath. A calculation. A possibility. The communication console pinged. Another incoming transmission. The game was about to change again. The isolation chamber began to dissolve. Elena Reyes watched as the quantum barriers that had contained them for so long started to break down. Michael Chen stood beside her, fingers hovering over the communication console. This was the moment everything would change. The Galactic Council's representatives appeared on multiple holographic displays. The crystalline being from the Andromeda cluster, the Zornak diplomatic team, representatives from 17 different species, all watching, waiting. "Your isolation is ending," the crystalline representative announced. Elena knew what this meant. Their final transmission would define humanity's place in the galactic diplomatic community. Weeks of careful preparation, months of strategic thinking, years of being viewed as an unpredictable species. Everything came down to this moment. Michael pressed the final transmission sequence. A complex web of data, solutions, and potential pathways began to flow across the communication channels. The Zornak representative's multiple eyes seemed to blink in confusion, and something else. Respect. "We're offering a different way," Elena said simply. The holographic displays filled with data, economic models, conflict resolution strategies, resource distribution plans that could prevent multiple potential wars. Silence filled the room. Then, unexpectedly, the crystalline representative spoke. "Interesting," it said. The quantum barriers continued to dissolve. Their isolation was ending, but something new was beginning. The communication console pinged one final time. Humanity's first true diplomatic breakthrough was about to be recognized.